This is a house of peace. Breathe in a grateful breath that you sit here. This moment of your life, safely and in silence. There is a war raging far from this place of comfort. We know it is there. We know our brothers and sisters suffer its poisonous touch. Our hearts are weighted with what we cannot resolve. So here we lift a banner in our own souls and remember that in this place, in this moment, we are not at war. Breathe in the truth of this moment. Here is our strength, our deep well of courage. Breathing in, we rest our spirits. Breathing out, we pray for peace. May those in harm's way be safe for another day. May those who drive the engines of power be awakened by compassion. May we all hold the cup filled with courage and will that has been carried by peacemakers in ages before us. May we drink of it deeply and be steadfast in the ways of peace. You are all welcome here this morning. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for whatever joy or sorrow you have, or just to bring more light into the world, please do so while we sit in stillness, listening to the prelude. Erica Hewitt brings our chalice lighting this morning from Story, Song, and Spirit. We light our chalice this morning for the beauty of the earth, for fireflies, bright lilies, and the sparkling sunlight, for the hills and mountains and the moon that rises above the horizon. We light this chalice for the beauty of this company, the familiar faces and new friends, and hands that form an ever-expanding circle of joy, love, and peace. If you would stand and body your spirit. Join me as together we remind ourselves of the affirmation that is a cornerstone of our free faith. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and to help one another. You may be seated.
Today is our 8th Sunday, continuing our look at the Great Peacemakers, true stories from around the world. The 7th Sunday addressed male leaders who advocated for valuing all life. This Sunday, we will hear about Astrid Lindgren and Jane Goodall. They are two female leaders who advocated for valuing all life instead of just human life. You will hear many echoes of our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all of existence of which we are a part. Much of the dialogue is taken directly from the book. Astrid Lindgren's heroine, Pippi Longstocking, made her one of the most popular children's authors of all time. Surprisingly, few people outside of her home country of Sweden know that Lindgren was a heroine in her own right. This best-selling author, who sold more than 130 million books in over 60 languages, used her superb storytelling skills and sense of fairness and fun to be an influential voice for the voiceless, children and animals. Astrid Eriksson was born in 1907 to parents who worked a family farm near Vimmerby, Sweden. Her young life was a wondrous adventure. Playing in the barnyard, she delighted in discovering the feel of a calf's tongue against her skin, the smell of baby rabbits cuddled together, and the sound of milk streaming into a pail, and the gentleness of newly hatched chicks cradled in her hands. These experiences gave Lindgren a compassion for animals that would stay with her for the rest of her life. After discovering her love of stories, when a farmhand's daughter read her a fairy tale, Lindgren began reading, reenacting, and writing stories. She did this so well that her classmates were certain that she would one day become an author. To the delight of millions of children who have read her books, this prediction came true. But first, Lindgren's happy childhood would come to an end. One spring, Lindgren realized that she was too old to play so-called children's games anymore, and her buoyant spirit sank. Over time, her sadness became rebellion, and she cut her hair short, became a flapper, and by the age 19 was pregnant, single, and not willing to marry the child's father. Ostracized in her hometown, Lindgren moved to Stockholm, took a job as a secretary, and planned to raise her child on her own. Unfortunately, after her son Lars was born, Lindgren was unable to support him on her meager salary and had to give him up to foster parents. 5 years later, she married Sture Lindgren, a businessman, and was able to bring Lars back home. After the Lindgren's daughter, Corinne, was born, Lindgren, who believed that children needed a parent at home, quit her job and became a full-time homemaker. Once, when Corinne was sick at home, she asked her mother to tell her a story about an imaginary girl she called Pippi Longstocking. Pippi's unusual name led Lindgren to create a colorful character with bright red hair and two braids protruding straight out from either side of her head. A free spirit, Pippi lived alone with a horse and a monkey, questioned authority, and was so strong she could lift her horse above her head. Corinne loved Pippi and continually begged Lindgren for more tales about her. In time, Lindgren wrote the stories down and then sent them to a publisher. To her surprise, a revised version of her manuscript was published. For the next 3 decades, Lindgren wrote at least one book every year, saw her stories turned into films, and became one of Sweden's most beloved celebrities. In Lindgren's stories, freedom, fairness, and fun abound, and problems are solved through cleverness, not violence. Pippi, quote, Pippi was power, but she never misuses that power, which I think is the most splendid thing and the most difficult, unquote. Like Pippi, Lindgren strongly opposed the abuse of power and was not afraid to say so. For example, when awarded the German book dealers' Peace Prize, in her acceptance speech, she told a poignant story. A mother who never hit her son one day decided he had misbehaved so badly that he deserved a spanking, the first of his life. She told him to go outside and find a switch from a tree for her to use on him. The boy was gone a long time, and when he returned, he was crying. He said to her, "Mama, I couldn't find a switch, but here's a rock. You can throw it at me." Suddenly, the mother saw her son's perspective, that if she really wanted to hurt him, she might as well do it with a rock. Tears flowed down her face as she embraced her son and purposefully set the rock on a shelf as a constant reminder to herself, never violence. Lindgren believed that although child rearing sometimes requires firmness, it never requires violence. She said, quote, "We see dictators, tyrants, oppressors, and torturers often had bad childhoods. Most were raised by a tyrannical father or a guardian with a whip in hand. It is a joy for all of us if a child's attitude has been determined by love and not violence. For even the character of statesmen and politicians is formed before they are 5 years old. This is a horrifying fact, but true," unquote. Heeding this message, Sweden soon made it illegal for parents to hit their children. Besides violence against children, Lindgren also was forced on other social issues such as unfair taxation. As a best-selling author, Lindgren could have afforded a luxurious lifestyle. However, she consciously chose to live in the same humble apartment she had inhabited since 1940 and paid her taxes dutifully. One day, she received a tax bill for 102% of her income. The logic was that because she was self-employed, she owed the taxes of both employer and employee. Shocked, Lindgren published a satirical fairy tale in a large newspaper criticizing exorbitant taxes. The Minister of Finance countered with annoying remarks. She suggested that he take up her occupation, since he was horrible at arithmetic, but great at storytelling. The commotion sparked public discussion, bringing about tax cuts and ending the responsible party's 40-year reign. In time, Lindgren turned her attention to industrial factory farming, which she deemed heartless compared to the small-scale family farming she had experienced in her childhood. Believing that, quote, those of us who care have to raise our voices for the animals who can't speak for themselves, unquote. She published newspaper articles decrying factory farming and pointed out how the vast majority of animals raised to be killed for food were subjected to severe confinement and brutal and inhumane treatment. They were no longer seen as cows, chickens, and pigs, but solely as production units. In one article, she imagined giving God a tour of a modern slaughterhouse. In the article, after seeing the deplorable conditions, God asked, "What kinds of blockheads are these to whom I have given dominion over the animals?" Lindgren replied, quote, "They're the same kinds of blockheads who keep laying hens crammed into cages that are too small and half-grown calves standing all day and night on hard slotted floors, and dairy cows chained in their cells. And not one of them, not a pig, nor a calf, nor a chicken, nor a cow, ever seeing your radiant sun or your fresh greenery as long as they live," unquote. The article continued with God slapping his forehead and asking, "But is everyone in this country a blockhead?" Lindgren assured him, quote, "No, of course not. And most everyone knows that our animal husbandry is like nowadays. So there's a terrific debate raging about how to improve it," unquote. This debate led to Sweden's passing of its 1988 Animal Welfare Act, which Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson announced as a birthday present for Lindgren. Although the law did not meet all of Lindgren's hopes, it was still, at that time, the world's most comprehensive animal welfare law ever passed. The law and its revision in 1998 mandated better protection for pets and animals used for wool, skins, furs, scientific experiments, sporting events, exhibitions, and food. It banned packed housing conditions and the use of electrical prods. It required animals to be allowed to behave in ways natural to their species, gave animals access to pasture and soft bedding, and prohibited people who mistreated animals from keeping animals ever again. The law also benefited people because it improved animal husbandry practices and more humane living conditions. Swedish food became virtually free of salmonella and other diseases that can be transferred from animals to humans. Throughout her twilight years, Lindgren continued to speak up for animals and children. She established the Astrid Lindgren Foundation for Better Animal Protection. In 1995, the Stockholm Hospital Administration named the most modern children's hospital in the world after her. Furthermore, her work made such an impression on the Swedish people that 2 theme parks, Astrid Lindgren's World and Junabacken, were created in her honor. In 1997, Lindgren was named International Swede of the Year. Accepting this tribute with characteristic humor, Lindgren joked, quote, "I'm an old person who's deaf and half blind and totally crazy. And now I'm Swede of the Year. We'd better not advertise this. They'll think all Swedes are like this," unquote. Lindgren's lifelong adventure came to a close in 2002, when at age 94, she passed away in her sleep. Approximately 100,000 mourners lined the streets of Stockholm as a horse-drawn carriage brought her white coffin to the cathedral where Swedish monarchs are crowned. Lindgren had once said, quote, If I have brightened up one single sad childhood, then I have at least accomplished something in my life, unquote. Indeed, she accomplished that and much more. Although her playful spirit and splendid storytelling ability, Astrid Lindgren brought joy to millions of people around the world and helped Sweden become a more humane place for children and animals, not to mention taxpayers. We will now see a short video followed by a few more famous quotes, and then we will be singing hymn 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky.
Första gången Pippi nämndes överhuvudtaget, det var när jag var 7 år. Och var sjuk och låg till sängs och det blev långt och uttråkigt. Och jag begärde då att mamma skulle underhålla mig i varje fall på kvällarna genom att läsa eller berätta. En kväll när jag hade tjatat kanske ovanligt mycket så sa hon till sist då lite uppgivet, men vad ska jag berätta då? Och då sa jag berätta om Pippi Långstrump, högg jag bara till med. Det var ju bara något som kom flygande. Och då så var det väl något med det namnet som gjorde att hon kunde hitta på lite till fast hon var trött. Och började berätta om den konstiga Pippi Långstrump. Och så fortsatte det. Kväll efter kväll. Och till sist blev det en bok. Och jag visste ju inte att hon skrev ner berättelserna. Jag fick ju boken på min 10-årsdag. Så jag identifierade mig nog mer med Tommy och Annika som var de som fick uppleva Pippi som en underbar lekkamrat. Och själva Pippi var nog allt för långt ifrån hur jag var som karaktär.
Touch the earth, reach the sky, walk on shores while spirits fly, over the ocean, over the land, our faith a quest to understand. Touch the earth, reach the sky, children ask the reasons why. In our lives the answers show, and by our love they learn and grow. Touch the earth, reach the sky, all are born and all shall die. Lies the time left in between, to follow a star, to build a dream. Touch the earth, reach the sky, hug the laughter, feel the cry. May we see where we can give, for this is what it means to live. Touch the earth, reach the sky, soar with courage ever high, spirits joining as we fly, to touch the earth, to reach the sky.
As we prepare ourselves for meditation, let us hear these words by Oscar Romero from The Violence of Love. Peace is not the product of terror or fear. Peace is not the silence of cemeteries. Peace is not the silent result of violent repression. Peace is the generous, tranquil contribution of all to the good of all. Peace is dynamism. Peace is generosity. It is right and it is a duty. Please join me while we sit in silence, in stillness.
Living in the Tanzanian forest for more than 25 years, English ethologist Dr. Jane Goodall made discoveries about chimpanzees that rocked the scientific world and blurred the line between humans and animals. Today, Goodall has traded the forest for the concrete jungle, traveling more than 300 days each year. She tirelessly urges people everywhere to realize their most exceptional trait, their humanity, and treat all living creatures, including humans, with greater kindness and respect. In London, England, in 1934, Valerie Jane Morris Goodall was born to parents who early on saw her fascination with nature and animals. Growing up, Goodall loved exploring the garden, playing with her dog, and climbing her favorite tree, where she dreamed of someday going to Africa, studying animals, and writing books about them. Goodall held on to her dream through the trying years of World War II and her parents' divorce. Because her now single mother could not pay for Goodall to go to college, let alone Africa, she suggested that Goodall become a secretary so that she could work practically anywhere in the world. Agreeing, Goodall worked in London until one day when she received an invitation from a friend who, now living with her parents in Kenya, invited Goodall to come for a visit. Elated, Goodall immediately moved back home, saved every penny she could for the ship fare, and 1957 set sail. Goodall remembered, quote, "I was 23 years old, and I was leaving all that I knew, my home, my family, my country. But I don't remember anything except a feeling of absolute amazement. It was actually happening. I was sailing off to Africa." Once in Africa, Goodall met anthropologist Dr. Louis Leakey, who hired her as his secretary and eventually invited her to do a study of wild chimpanzees. Although Goodall was not a scientist, Leakey believed that her innate curiosity and patience were exactly what was required for the study. Thrilled, Goodall read everything she could about chimpanzees while Leakey sought funding for the project. Once funding was received, Goodall traveled to what is now Tanzania's Gombe Stream National Park, and at an age of 26, ventured into the forest in search of the great apes. Right away, Goodall broke fundamental rules of scientific research. Instead of giving her subjects numbers, she gave them names. Instead of being coldly objective, she empathized with her subjects. After nearly 16 months of diligent observation, in 1961, Goodall witnessed something that would turn the scientific world upside down. Until then, it was believed that only humans made and used tools. However, Goodall saw two chimpanzees, which she named David Graybeard and Goliath, pulling leaves from plant stalks, inserting the bare stalks into termite mounds, and eating the termites that crawled onto the stalks. Chimpanzees were making and using tools. Quote, "I'm not the first person to have seen that. Lots of Africans had seen it, but I was the first scientist to report it," unquote. Shocking the scientific world, Goodall's discovery blurred the line between humans and animals, forcing scientists to redefine tool, redefine human, or accept chimpanzees as close to human. The discovery attracted additional funding, particularly from the National Geographic Society, which allowed the research to continue while Goodall earned a PhD from Cambridge University in ethnology, the study of the behavior of animals in their natural habitat. When Goodall returned to the forest, chimpanzees began gradually accepting her, a trend led by Graybeard, who was the first to trust her enough to approach her. One afternoon, sitting near Graybeard, Goodall noticed a ripe piece of fruit on the ground. She picked it up and offered it to him. He took the fruit and let it fall to the ground, but gently held on to her hand, giving her the sense that although he did not want the fruit, he appreciated the offer. For a wild chimpanzee to voluntarily choose to hold her hand was a truly moving experience that made Goodall's bond with animals even stronger. In 1964, Goodall married filmmaker Hugo van Lawick, and they had a son. Unfortunately, the couple grew apart, and after 10 years, they divorced. Shortly thereafter, Goodall married the director of Tanzania's national parks, Derek Bryson, in 1975. Later that year, armed rebels raided Goodall's camp and kidnapped 4 of her students for ransom. Fortunately, after the ransom was paid, the hostages were returned. Deeply disturbed by this incident, Goodall questioned why humans display such aggressive behavior, whereas chimpanzees displayed more peaceful behavior. However, when a series of brutal attacks, even cannibalism, broke out among the chimpanzees, Goodall reconsidered the nature of violence in both species. She concluded that although both are capable of both peaceful and violent behavior, chimpanzees probably could not override their violent impulses, whereas with their advanced brains, humans could if they only chose to do so. Goodall's research was placed on hold when in 1980 her husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer and passed away. Sorrow gripped the young widow, and one day, seeking solace, she entered the forest, not to study the chimpanzees, but simply to be with them. Setting among them, as a storm cleared, gave Goodall a sense of peace that helped her to carry on. Returning to her work, Goodall compiled her decades-long research into a book, The Chimpanzees of Gumbi. While celebrating its release at a conference in Chicago, Illinois, Goodall learned of threats facing chimpanzees outside of Gumbi. She was alarmed to learn that around the world, chimpanzees were suffering in painful laboratory experiments. They were being hunted for food and captured for the live animal trade, and their habitats were being destroyed at startling rates. Immediately, Goodall launched a global campaign to save her beloved chimpanzees. She said, quote, "I came out of that conference, and from that time on, October 1986, I haven't spent more than 3 weeks in one place." To verify what she had heard, Goodall personally toured a laboratory that conducted experiments on chimpanzees, whose DNA differs from humans only slightly by more than 1%. Wearing a mask to prevent the transfer of germs to the chimpanzees, Goodall entered a windowless room of concrete and steel. There she met one of approximately 300 chimpanzees at the facility, an adult male named Jojo. Taken from the wild, Jojo had been placed in a cage, 5 feet square and 7 feet tall, and his body was rented to pharmaceutical companies for testing drugs and vaccines. Jojo had been living this way for at least 10 years. Years that Goodall sensed were filled with sheer boredom, interrupted only by moments of fear and pain. Slowly, Goodall knelt down in front of Jojo's cage and looked into his brown eyes, recalling, quote, Jojo had committed no crime, yet he was imprisoned for life. The shame I felt because I was human. Very gently, Jojo reached through the bars and touched my cheek where the tears ran down into my mask, unquote. Since then, Goodall has called for an end to the testing of cosmetics and household products on animals, a reduction in the number of animals used in medical experiments, and the development of non-animal alternatives such as tissue culture, computer simulation, and in vitro testing. When critics object to her position on these issues, Goodall explains that to save her mother's life, doctors implanted a pig valve in her mother's heart. The valve was taken from a commercially slaughtered pig, but the procedure was developed with pigs in laboratories. Goodall feels truly grateful to the pigs for this and wants to do what she can to improve conditions for animals like them, both in the labs and on the farms, and to support alternatives so that no more animals will need to be used for such procedures in the future. As for the animals in the wild, Goodall oversees conservation programs through her Jane Goodall Institute, recognizing that helping wildlife and helping people go hand in hand. The Institute uses what it terms community-centered conservation, which gives people alternatives to hunting or selling wild animals or chopping down forests to survive. For example, in Africa, the Institute employs local people to staff its sanctuaries for orphan chimpanzees, buys all food for the sanctuaries from local markets, and helps local people develop sustainable small businesses. Further, to inspire children and teens to value all life, Goodall developed the Roots and Shoots Global Youth Program. Active in more than 94 countries, Roots and Shoots teaches young people that, quote, peace means caring for people, animals, and the environment, and realizing that your actions have effect on all living things, unquote. Reminding participants of this message, Roots and Shoots offers an acronym for peace: people, environment, animals, care, and effects. Dame of the British Empire and United Nations Messenger of Peace, Goodall travels more than 300 days each year, working tirelessly toward a day when animals like Graybeard, Jojo, and all beings will be treated with respect. A recipient of the Gandhi King Award for Nonviolence and the French Légion d'Honneur, Dr. Jane Goodall believes, quote, if only we can overcome cruelty to human and animal with love and compassion, we shall stand at the threshold of a new era in the human moral and spiritual evolution and realize at last our most unique quality, humanity, unquote. Goodall is a vegetarian and advocates the diet for ethical, environmental, and health reasons. We will now see an excerpt from a movie about Jane Goodall, followed by a few more famous quotes, and then the song from the Gray Hymnal, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky.
July 14th, 1960. 26-year-old Jane Goodall arrives on the shores of Gombe Stream Game Reserve on the coast of what is now Tanzania.
When I looked at the wild and rugged mountains where the chimpanzees lived, I knew that my task was not going to be easy.
She had been sent by renowned anthropologist Dr. Louis Leakey, who then approached the National Geographic Society about supporting Jane's work. She has no field experience or college degree. What she has is determination to observe chimpanzees with a mind uncluttered by conventional scientific methods.
When I first came to Gombe to study chimpanzees, I knew nothing about them. Nobody really knew very much about them.
She also has the courage to spend months in a remote, even dangerous place, getting closer to wild chimps than anyone before her. Within weeks, she is making astonishing discoveries. Chimps will hunt down large mammals and eat them. And more shocking, they not only use tools, but make them as well.
The chimpanzee is actually modifying a natural object to suit it to a specific purpose, thus making a tool. When Louis Leakey first heard about tool using at Gombe, he got extremely excited and said, now we have to redefine man, redefine tool, or include chimpanzees with humans.
These discoveries, caught on film, sent National Geographic into a flurry of coverage. In the next 5 years, National Geographic presents Jane's first film and many articles in the magazine. Jane becomes a star. She and her beloved chimps, David Greybeard, Flo, and Flint, become known worldwide. And Jane redefines science, adding an emotional component.
It's perfectly possible to be incredibly emotionally involved, feeling great empathy for your subject.
It's what would drive Jane to learn as much about chimps as anyone in the world, to find out how alike we really are.
During the very early years, I thought how like people they were, but they seemed to be much more gentle, much nicer. But then it became more and more apparent that chimpanzees, like humans, have a dark side to their nature.
She witnesses a war between chimpanzees that lasts 4 years. Decades deep in her study, Jane discovers that the chimp populations are under threat from the outside. By the 1980s, they are an endangered species. Jane realizes she can best save these creatures by leaving Gombe, to speak to the world face to face about the importance of protecting these chimps.
If we just sit back and allow the chimpanzees here and everywhere else to become extinct, it'll be an enormous black mark on us as a species. As we destroy the natural world, we end up with a situation where the people are suffering. So there has to be a way of creating a balance between humans and the natural world.
Gombe has since become a national reserve, and Jane's sights are set on the future. She has launched conservation projects, humanitarian work. The Jane Goodall Institute is promoting a new generation of conservationists.
Oh, wow, nice.
And helping to mentor a new generation of chimp researchers.
And I'm going to do everything I can to cheer them on, because that, I think, is the only hope.
50 years later, Jane has witnessed the lives of 3 generations of chimpanzees. The dream that Jane Goodall set in motion lives on, and her partnership with National Geographic continues. The October issue of National Geographic magazine features a celebration of the young English girl who was a pioneer in so many ways, who patiently reached across every boundary to draw us closer to our closest relatives.
Creatures of the earth and sky, come kindred and lift your voices high. Alleluia, alleluia. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Swift rushing winds so wild and strong, white clouds that sail in heaven along. Alleluia, alleluia. Fair rising morn in praise rejoice, high stars of healing find a voice. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. The zur Schau. Halleluja, 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 Halleluja.
Arthur Foote II brings us these words for giving. Freely have we received of gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. Please give generously. The bowl awaits you, or you may donate online. I invite you to stand in body or spirit for the benediction and extinguishing of the chalice. Our benediction today is We Have a Calling, written by Jean M. Rowe. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are a people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace. Join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace to be peace.